So what does a perfect day look like for me? Well, it involves three simple things. One, a toolbox. Two, a sunny Saturday. That's what we have here. And the final thing, a trip to the wreckers. And this is what we're here for. The yellow Type 3 convertible tourer, or whatever the heck it is. I've heard that it was here in the yard. I'm glad it's here. What we need is the handbrake mechanism for Tom's bug. So let's get into it. And here's what I'm after. I'm after the handbrake mechanism. I'm not sure if it's exactly the one I need for the Beetle. They are a little bit hard to get hold of, but it has got that ratchet system on it, which is what we're after, which is always cool. Now, while I'm at it, check these out. The best investment you can make when you go to the wrecking yard is go via a Bunnings, and for $4.50, buy yourself a pair of these. And on a cool day like today, keep your hands warm too. All right, so that's the parts for the Volkswagen picked up. While I'm here in the yard, I thought we'd go for a bit of a walk and have a look at some of the cars that are in the yard. And it's 2020, we're in the COVID lockdown, and it's interesting to see what sort of vehicles are sitting in yards now, available for parts, and what you can do with them. So let's go for a bit of a walk and have a bit of a look at what they've got at the U-Pull-It down here in Lonsdale. Just a bit of an example. I'm in the European side. There's an Audi TT sitting there, a couple of BMs, a couple of old Peugeots. And sometimes you find cars that are worth something. Majority of these cars have sort of ended their service life, and you know, not many people want them apart from parts, but every now and again you find a car and you go, that's got a pretty good engine in it and stuff. And I've got some more to show you over the back, so let's go for a walk and see what we can find. Here we go. Now here's a car that is quite interesting. This is a Toyota PASEO, a very small two-door sports car. Not many of these were made, and there's a very good reason for them, because they were pretty well garbage across the board. Yeah, it was a little two-door sports car and it had a twin cam motor, but back in the day this thing was sitting next to, you know, Toyota Supras and Toyota Celicas. There's one hiding over the back over there, but you know, disc brakes on the front, drum brakes on the back, 4-stud. It really was a POV pack sports car, probably more a glorified Toyota Corolla with a two-door body. Next. All right, well, here's an interesting car. This is a Mark I Golf convertible. Now, by the looks of it, the convertible work has probably been done by somebody, and look, self-opening door. How awesome. So it looks like this convertible's been actually done by somebody else, but back in the day, these things here were quite desirable. A lot of people wanted them back in the 90s. And this particular one here, by the looks of it, yeah, it has been customized because it doesn't have the little rear latch, but haven't seen one of them for a while. Given the current state of what's going on at the moment, I reckon we might give this one a bit of a wide berth. Looks pretty good though. Okay, so next up on the cars that were okay but didn't quite cut the mustard is this. This is a Toyota, so a Holden Astra convertible. Now, it was the UK version. You can see it was a two-door, but what was most important about this car here was actually the little badge on the side. It's now been ripped off. That badge was Bertone, and Bertone was an Italian designer who did things like Fiats and Ferraris and bits and pieces, and lent their styling hand to the Astra. And whilst it was a good looking car back in the day, just didn't quite cut the mustard, so sort of was relegated to where it is right now, the wrecking yard. Now I can take you on a walk and show you a number of different Commodores that we have up here, and there's everything from Mang V6s to the later 3-litre style like this one here. These weren't bad motors, but the biggest problem with them, they had timing chain issues, and when the timing chain issues came, there was all sorts of other bits and pieces as well. Now the Mang here, well, that Ecotech went through all sorts of changes from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then it was phased out. But you can still find some pretty good VT, late VT style VX, VY ones, and these ones have the better intake plenums on them as well. Some of them have got roller rockers, and the horsepower, you know, I mean, they're about 140 something kilowatts or something like that. They don't put out the most amount of power, but bang for your buck, when you're single pegging at the burnout comp, they are awesome value for money. Okay, this is a pretty rare sight. This is actually a Nissan SKYLINE sitting here, and it's an R31. It actually came out with this motor here, which is the RB30 motor, which is a single overhead cam Australian design from the mighty RB motors that you saw in the other Skylines, the RB26, RB25, RB20. They were the same motor that was fitted into the Holden Commodore. Quite rare to see this one sitting here. Pretty good cars in the day. Most of the Nissan Pulsars came out with a little 1.8, 1.6 litre looking thing that looks something like this one here. And it was okay. This one's an N15 Pulsar. But the Pulsars and Nissans tended to swap engines around. And then there's this Pulsar sitting right here. This one actually has the badge that says 2 litre I, and the only engine that Nissan can put in being a 2 litre is this. And this is a silver top SR20 motor. So it's very similar to the motors you found in things like S15s, S14s, Silvias, 1Vias, all that sort of bits and pieces. These are a pretty good motor, and it's sitting here. You could pull it out, you could rebuild it. That's not a bad find, that. All right, well, this is a bit of a find in the wrecking yard. This is what's called a green top Barra 6-cylinder motor. Now, all the guys that build up the really tough turbo Barras and stuff like that, they love a green top, because this is actually a factory LPG motor. So they did make these a little bit tougher than normal. And it's just sitting here. It's probably got 1,000,001 kilometers on it, but all the basic stuff is there. You could probably come here, pull it out for not much more than about, say, $400 or $500. And right next to it, there's another one. This one's actually a silver top. So this one here was a petrol one. And there's a couple of different Holdens, so Fords along here, that have different Barra motors in them. And you can see some people are starting to pull them apart to get the bits and pieces that they need. I love wrecking yards. I just love them. You never know what you're going to find. And in amongst all the carnage, you suddenly find this little bit of inspiration and art. Have a look at the quarter panel on this thing. Someone has obviously put some work into this. Classy. So I'm now in the Mazda aisle, and Mazda's as far as the eye can see. There's a few bubbles around here, but the car I want to talk to you about is this one here. This is a 1994 Mazda 626. And what makes it most impressive was I was sort of an apprentice mechanic around about those days, but this car, actually, when you look at it, has actually stood the test of time pretty well. That's 1996. Have a look at the size of the A pillars and the B pillars. Now, going by today's standards, it's not all that modern, but it did have all the way back then. It had four-wheel disc brakes, it had fuel injection, power steering, air conditioning, all the good bits and pieces, V6 front-wheel drive. It was a pretty good sort of a vehicle. I've always thought that they have been an underrated car, and you see them now and again on the road, and they still look pretty modern. And when you consider that was a 1994, but this was a late 90s. Look at that box compared to that thing there. That looked like a spaceship when it first came out. Okay, so here we are in the Kia aisle. Is there anything you want to see here in the Kia aisle? Yeah, I didn't think you did either, but I have got something even cooler for you to show. A very rare Japanese JDM style two-door coupe, seldom seen in the Honda aisle. Have a look at this. This is actually a Honda Legend. Have a look at that beautiful styling of the coupe. And if you can go inside, which I'm not sure, I haven't opened the door. Back in the day, no, this thing looks like it's locked. Back in the day, this thing was it and a bit. And I reckon this side will open, just pillarless doors. Have a look at this inside. Leather. This was a really nice place to sit if you were in the 90s, 80s, all that sort of stuff. Have a look at that pistol grip style. fantastic, awesome. But the big story about the Legend was what was up front, because it shared the engine with a very special car, which was the Honda NSX. So this motor here essentially was the base for what the NSX had in it. Now, as you can see, she's pretty cramped in here, and a lot of the weight is actually over the front of where the wheels go. So the weight's the front heavy car. It didn't really handle all that well, as opposed to when it was in the NSX. So the rear wheels were at the back, it was in front, it was mid-engined. But this thing here, back in the day, the styling on this vehicle was amazing, and it was expensive too. You know, we're talking nearly Mercedes-Benz, BMW money for this, but it was the very pinnacle of Japanese luxury, and very rare to see it in a wrecking yard this day and age. So what constitutes a rare car in a wrecking yard? Something that was rare when it was made, or something you just don't see because it's highly prized, or something that was never really popular and quirky back when it was released, but now they're kind of cool and they've got a bit of a cult following. Well, how about this thing here? Mazda 30X. This little coupe is very, very interesting because it's not actually a Mazda, it's a EUNOS 30X, and it was a genuine two-seater. A lot of people haven't actually seen these things. Had this massive big rear hatch, big open area here. It was a very American designed thing, big huge swoopy doors, almost like a bit like an SLK, the little short Mercedes-Benz. Really cool steering wheel. Notice there's no airbag, because this didn't have airbags back then. 5-speed gearbox, leather seats, all the good bits and pieces. Disc brakes on the rear, disc brakes on the front. But there was something interesting up front, because yes, these had two different engine options, and this particular one had the rarest engine option of the lot. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a 2-litre V6 Mazda motor. Very rare, because normally they're a larger capacity. Look at that, it's got a strut brace across the top and so forth, air conditioning, all the good bits and pieces. And back in the day, these were a very different type of vehicle to see on the road, and indeed quite rare. Okay, so I'm down here in the Suzuki aisle, and unfortunately I don't have any little Suzuki Swifts to show you, but what I do have right opposite is the Mitsubishi aisle of the Lancers. And I've got all the Lancers here, and this one here is the one I want to have a chat to you about, because this is the Lancer Coupe, and you can sort of see the design and so forth. And this came out sort of, you know, in the early 90s, and it was perfected during that period of time when the Magna was the king with the V6, and these came out with a 1.6 and a, no, sorry, 1.5 and a 1.8 litre motor, 5-speed automatic, all the good bits and pieces. But the one thing that the Lancer has that I think a lot of people will agree with me on is that whoever designed that shape, whoever designed that coupe shape, just got it right. The proportions were right, the door size was right, and you know, even today, if you put a good set of rims on them, for somebody's, you know, runabout car, or a car to go to work in, or a first car, they're a pretty good deal. When you have a look at that 4-door that's sitting next to it, that 4-door, I mean, it's okay, I mean, it is what it is, it's a 4-door, but then when you have a look at that and you come back to the coupe, have a look at the design of the way this has been done through here. Really nice, subtle design lines that work really well. And in silver, obviously, it looks even better. All right, let's have a little bit of fun now. What we do is we're going to play a game called Count the HRVs. You ready? Go. How many did you count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got 9 HRVs sitting here. And some of these cars are complete. There's nothing wrong with them. You can put a battery in, you can start them up. So you kind of go, why are there so many complete HRVs sitting in the wrecking yard? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. This particular vehicle here is actually what we call a statutory write-off. It looks complete, there's nothing wrong with it. We can go and have a look inside. Look at it. Nice. Oh, look how good these seats are. It even smells good. Keys, all the bits and pieces are there. Everything's there. But something has been done. The seatbelts have been cut, and the airbags have been deployed as well. And the reason being is because these were the cars that were part of that Takata airbag recall. So because there's no replacement airbag for these cars, it basically means you can't put them back on the road. You can't do anything with them. But they're a resource of automotive whatever. So what the guys are doing at this yard here is you can come down and you can buy that CRV for next to nothing. They really don't want all that much for them, but they're only for off-road and farm use or racing use or something similar. Now, can you race a HRV? I'm bloody sure you could with the right frame of mind. But think about it from this point of view. If you know someone who's got a block of land or something like that, a car like this could be really good for you to teach your kids to drive, have a bit of fun on the weekend and whatever. Instead of thrashing your car on the street, you built around a paddock and something like this. So all things being equal, I think this is a pretty good initiative. So if you want a HRV, come here and buy one. Yeah, sorry about that. They're a CRV, not a HRV. Now, if you've been watching Netflix recently, you've probably been watching the Michael Jordan Last Dance, and in that series, you'll notice he has a whole lot of different cars and bits and pieces, but one of them is the vehicle that I'm sitting in right now, which actually is a Land Rover V8, believe it or not. And this thing's sitting here in the yard, and it actually looks pretty good. It's all pretty complete. All the good bits and pieces are still here, including the 3.9 litre. Now, the 3.9 litre, a lot of people said was the Rover V8, but the reality of it is this actually had the motor that was designed by Buick. Rover took it and built it under license in the UK and put it into all sorts of different bits and pieces, and ended up being like 4.4 litre and everything else in between, but pretty good looking rig. All right, this next thing is an interesting looking thing. This is, I think, a Holden Scurry. I'm pretty sure it is. I think it was originally a Suzuki, and then a few other different brands had them, and they were one of the first K-class cars in Japan. And this one actually looks pretty complete. It's a pity it's in the yard, because you'd probably think someone could have saved this and done something with them. And they aren't really very big on the grand scheme of things. They have these cool little... No, that's not going to work. They are absolutely tiny when you look at them. And when you compare them to the big bulky space age Tarago next door, the little Holden Scurry is a pretty cool looking little thing. It's also the high roof version as well. Have a look at that. It's got the extra on there. I once saw one of these up at Queensland Raceway, and the guy had actually swapped in a 13B and he'd put S13 coilovers, and the thing was slammed on the ground. These will be a future classic if they're not already there. Memory Lane at Upullet has to be my favourite place to go, and every single Upullet yard across South Australia has one, and here they are. Now, they're not pretty, make no bones about it, they're not pretty, but they certainly are classics. Here we got ourselves a little Triumph. This one should have the 6-cylinder motor sitting underneath, or what's left of it. Land Crab, that's a Morris, I think, something like that. Holden of some description, a Holden Ute. Looks like it's got a red motor sitting underneath the bonnet there. Doesn't tell us too much more about it apart from being a Kingswood. Little Morris Minor, these are not bad. Always wanted to do one of those as a gasser, so maybe when the time's right, Ruby and I might do that. Another little Land Crab. This one here, they're quite popular. A lot of people like them. I can't say that they're my cup of tea. Have a look how good the grill is on this one here though, if you're looking for some parts. Has the little mini motor inside of it as well. Austin Land Crab. Austin 1300, there you go. Another Holden. This one's had a little bit of rust and a bit of cancer on it. Although, you know, there's not a bad sort of a guard here, and obviously a few good bits and pieces you could probably salvage from inside here. The venereal Datsun 120Y. This one's interesting because it is the hatchback version, but you can see rust has well and truly got hold of this thing, and it's now Hong Kong Phooey for sure. Back in the day, these were, a lot of people sort of ridiculed them, laughed at them, and now they're highly prized and highly coveted. Next to it we have a Dodge. I think it's a DeSoto. I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure on the year. It'll be 50 something with the curves and bits and pieces. Look, these cars are interesting because when they get to this age, realistically, everything on this is worth money to the right person who's building something. And finally, right at the very end, we have a HG HK Ute. And it's probably seen better days on the grand scheme of things. Guards look a bit so-so. There's really not a huge amount that you could save out of this thing now. It's probably right at the end of its service life. So I'm sure somebody will want something, maybe the fuel tank, or maybe that tennis ball, or maybe that fuel filter. I don't know. Someone will use it all for something. So there we go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the little tour of the yard. You never know what you're going to come across when you come to a wrecking yard. They're a great place to come if you're a middle-aged man like me and you don't do any fitness or sport anymore. Wrecking yards are a great place to come and just sort of chill out and relax and and be on your own and be your own person and look at cars and touch stuff and buy stuff and take junk home that you don't need to get told off when you get it home. But realistically, it's a little bit of a Aladdin's cave here, and that's what makes wrecking yards so much fun. So do yourself a favour, when you get a break in the weather over winter, turn the Xbox off, turn the TV off, grab your tools, head to the wrecking yard and see what treasures you come up with. Catch you next time.